Welcome back to the Wizard Shop. We're right in the middle of a crazy crisis, but let's talk about the last crisis we had back in 2008, right after this. Once again, I wanted to thank you guys for the views that you've been giving me, and we've been keeping the videos rolling, keeping good content going for you guys, trying to keep your mind off of some of the craziness that's going on out there. You guys are really helping out, and I really appreciate it. Really appreciate the views. You guys have had a lot of really great comments, very positive comments. I've also been very appreciative of those. I want to say thanks for that as well. Now, just like in the beginning here, I talked about we're in a crazy crisis, and we are right now. The last one we were in 2008 wasn't because of any pandemics or anything of that nature, but some of the results of the last little crisis that we went through, I guess it wasn't little, was that some companies almost went under, and there was a lot of bailouts and a lot of quantitative easing, as they call it, that went out. But some companies, car companies in fact, didn't make it through regardless. And I'm just curious this time around what might happen in the situation we're in. It's kind of crazy, guys. I would have never thought we'd be here, but we are. I'm going to talk about 3 car manufacturers today. They're all General Motors that aren't with us anymore. They're not around. They didn't make it through the 2008 crisis. And actually one of them went under before that, but they're not here anymore. It's kind of sad. A lot of older guys talk about this car and that car, Oldsmobile Pontiacs and different things from years and years and decades. And to think, gone. There are no more. It's crazy. So anyways, in this video, guys, we're going to do kind of like a buy this, not that. I can't go through every single car that's ever made by Oldsmobile or different car manufacturers. I'll give a couple that I definitely would buy and wouldn't buy in each category. So the first car maker we're going to start out with is Oldsmobile. It was founded in 1897. They made pretty close to 35 million vehicles in the span of their existence. That's quite a lot of cars on the road. They're known for a lot of their full-size cars in their heyday that were kind of in between a Chevrolet and a Cadillac. They weren't the top of the line, but they weren't the base Chevrolet either. They're kind of in the middle of the road as far as luxury goes. And there's where their millions and millions of cars are. There's a lot of those on the road still. Now, Oldsmobile closed for business April 29th. 2004. They shuttered the doors, and that was the end of Oldsmobile as we know it. The last car that went out the door was a 4-door Oldsmobile Alero. That was the end of an age, and there are no more. It's kind of sad. It really is sad, guys. It's kind of sad, but one car that really comes to mind for me with Oldsmobiles is the Cutlass. When you talk about Oldsmobile with a group of guys, I think about Cutlass. They came out in 1961, and they made them all the way to 1999. They had quite a large span, but it wasn't the same car all along. When they first started, it was actually a unibody car from 61 to 63, and it was this very model of car is where we get the Land Rover V8, the 215 aluminum Buick V8. That's when it came out, and it failed miserably. And they sold it to Rover in England, and that car is all over the place in England now, and a lot of different cars, a Triumph TR8, a Land Rover, a Rover V8. So it's kind of interesting that the Cutlass brought upon the Rover V8. Then they went to body on frame from 64 all the way to 1982. Then they went back to a unibody, small little car, and they kind of had various different models until 1999 when the Cutlass was no more. That's just kind of a car that comes to mind when I think about Oldsmobiles, but I'm going to recommend 2 right now, one to buy and one not to buy from Oldsmobile. There would be a little bit more modern. I'm not going to go into buy, not buy of a 1968 something or other. There's really not that very many on the road anymore. The one I would recommend to buy is 99 to 2004 Oldsmobile Alero. 15 years ago, when we took our daughter home from the hospital, she was taken home in an Alero. Mrs. Wizard actually had one, and it was a very, very good car. There were 2 different engines. You could get a 4-cylinder, I think it was an Ecotec, or you could get the V6. We actually had the 4-cylinder model. They made over 500,000 of these cars, There's a lot of them still on the road. I see them today. You can see Aleros on the road. They look kind of cool, and they were very reliable. And you can pick one up for $2 or $3 grand in good shape today, and it'll be fairly reliable. You can use it as a day-to-day car. Based on owning that car and based on working on some of these cars along the way, it's definitely one that I could recommend to buy in the Oldsmobile segment. The one I recommend not to buy is actually a minivan, the Oldsmobile Silhouette van. They made these from 1990 to 2004. It was quite a span. And if you look at this picture here of a 1990, that's one goofy looking van. It looks like a wedge of cheese or something. It looks really odd. And even when they came out, they were really odd. But these are some of the years, especially as you get into 99, 2000, that they get the 3.4 V6, which is known for blowing head gaskets, or the 3.1s with intake gaskets. And not only is there a lot of trouble with the V6 motors, which is all they had was the V6 motor, but they really didn't sell very well, and because of the styling, they almost look hideous. They're weird. They're really weird. Unless it really appeals directly to a certain person, who might like that styling, the masses aren't going to buy it. The masses didn't buy it, and that's kind of why it kind of went under. So that would be one that I would recommend not to buy in the Oldsmobile segment. The next car maker that didn't make it through the last recession is Pontiac. Pontiac was founded in 1926. It's not as old as Oldsmobile or Buick or any of these other models. Pontiac hasn't been around as long, but they've still been around a long, long time. They were really known for being performance-oriented cars, especially in the 60s. You didn't buy a Pontiac so much to carry your family around. It was something a little bit more sporty, a little bit more power. They were more big block engines and fast. And one model that's really popular that we all know about is the GTO in the 60s. The GTO Judge. There's the Trans Am Firebird. These were muscle cars. Pontiac was known for muscle cars. The last car that rolled off an assembly line for Pontiac was a G6 in January of 2010. It did make it a little ways past the recession, and they tried. They used the bailouts, and they really tried to make it, and it just didn't work. They had to shutter Pontiac. GM was really starting to shutter things to try and stay alive, and Pontiac got the axe at that point, unfortunately. Mrs. Wizard had an '89 Grand Prix in college. I had a Grand Prix and a Grand Am at couple different states in my life, and I really wasn't very pleased with them. Towards the end, Pontiac really kind of took a turn for the worst. They made Grand Prix and Grand Ams and things. They were really cheap, and they were just, from what they used to be and what they became, I could kind of see why they went under and why they were chosen to get the axe, because they really didn't have cars out there that were really striking and really making huge sales. They just kind of were getting by. They went from a really hot muscle car to being a disposable throwaway Grand Am. When it went bad, when it got old, it would cost more to fix than the car's worth, and people junked them. There's not very many of them on the road anymore because they're all in the junkyards. There were some really cool models that tried to harken back to the performance era, would be like the Grand Prix GTP or the Bonneville Supercharged, also GTP. They were very fast, supercharged 3.8s. And the last-ditch efforts that they tried to grab some sales was a G6 and a G8. That's where they gave it one last good try, and unfortunately it still wasn't enough. They still went under. So the couple of models that I'm going to recommend for Pontiac to buy, not to buy, are going to be, obviously, again, they're not going to be old models like a 68 GTO. I'm not going to say yes or no to that because it's too old. So we're staying a little bit newer. The one I would recommend to buy from Pontiac would be 2004 to 2006 Pontiac GTO with the 6-liter V8. They look pretty good. They're very fast, very, very fast with the 6-liter V8. The only downside I saw to them when I've worked on them in the shop is the interior is of the level of an 01 Cavalier, guys, a Chevy Cavalier. I mean, just the bottom of the barrel interior. Cheap. Everything's hard plastic. Everything's uncomfortable. The old muscle cars of the old days were weren't all that extravagant in the interior, but they still looked good. And it's not going to be long before the interiors of these cars are falling apart, just like the Cavaliers did. They just don't hold up to age very well. Especially Grand Prix and Grand Am, some of the interiors in those, they really fell apart fast. It was like, wow, it's not that old, and the whole interior's collapsing on it. But still, if you can get past the interior, it's a really cool car. I see them going around. They sound amazing. I've driven some of them. They're fast. They're fun. They're really fun cars. I would recommend that those would be one to buy, being that it has the LS base V8, and I know how reliable those are. The ones I would recommend not to buy are really any of the modern era Grand Am or Grand Prix. It'd be 87, 80, 89, 92, 97, any in this range of the Grand Am or the Grand Prix. Just like I just mentioned, they're throwaway cars. You may find one that actually runs and drives, and it may do so for 2 or 3 months, and then the transmission starts slipping, or something goes wrong, or you get blown head gaskets on a 3.4. Then you get to the point of a blown head gasket. Like Mrs. Wizard, she had hers and it was 6 years old, and it had blown head gaskets, and the panels on the doors were falling off. And when you get to this point with these cars, and you take it to a mechanic, and they say it's going to be $2 grand, $3 grand to fix it, you didn't even pay that much for the car, and it becomes exactly what I just said, a throwaway car. You're done with it, it costs too much to fix, throw it in the garbage. I guess if you got it for $200 and it runs and drives, it might be worth it, but these are not going to be cars that are desirable. You don't want one of these. You get one of these because you have no choice and this is all you can afford. But if that's true, just keep in mind that when something does go wrong, it's going to be way more than you even paid for the car. Another thing to keep in mind with these old Grand Ams and Grand Prix as well is kind of like a domino effect. Every time you put $800 into it, something else breaks and it's $500, and then the next thing breaks and it's $600, and you're way, way, way above what you paid for the car. By the time you tally up how much you have spent to keep this thing running, you realize I could have bought a 2005 Toyota Corolla. I would have had no troubles. I would be driving, going to college, going to work, without these stresses of my car being broke all the time. And I could focus on other things in life. So keep that in mind if you're interested in one of these. They're really not worth it. The next car maker is also General Motors, and they didn't make it through the recession, and it is Saturn. Now keep in mind there are many other makes and models that didn't make it through the recession, but we're focusing on these three. And Saturn, I remember when Saturn came out. I was a little kid. I remember seeing the commercials on TV showing a Saturn driving through some hills or something, and it was like the new era, the new car. It even said that on the commercial, a different kind of car company. It was they marketed it as being a separate entity. It was owned by General Motors, but they didn't want to be really associated with General Motors. It was something clean sheet, something new. It was founded in 1990. Their first model was a 91 model, but it came out in the fall of 1990. So 91 is the first years of Saturns, and it was the S series that they came out with. The last car to roll off a Saturn assembly line was October 7th of 2009. And based on that date, you can make the assumption they didn't make it through the recession. I actually think some of the S series Saturns are some of really great cars on the road. A lot of the panels are made out of plastic. You could run a shopping cart into them and it just bounced off. If it cracked or broke, you could go get a replacement panel that's a similar color, same color, and bolt it back on. You didn't have to take it to the body shop and cut and weld and do all this other stuff. They had really good ideas, and I think they were a really good car. Any of the S series that I've seen on the road or that I've worked on, they just keep going and going. I know of a few in the community that I live in that are from 1992, 93, and the people are still driving them. They're still good cars. They're really good cars. They were built well. And one interesting thing about these S series is that it truly was clean sheet. There was not much of anything on these cars that was out of the General Motors parts bin. They didn't just grab window switches and window motors and this and that out of GM and throw them on a Saturn and call it a Saturn. There's a lot of stuff on these cars that doesn't relate to anything General Motors. Now you would think that might make it hard to find car parts for, but they're not. There were so many of them made. There were millions of these cars made. So you can go to your local parts store. They're going to have some parts for it. You're going to find that you might have to wait a few days to get them, but you'll be able to get them. There were multiple models that Saturn made. There was View, Ion, Aura, relay, outlook, the list goes on and on and on. They made all kinds of different models, and towards the end they were trying to do like the Saturn Sky, the Aura, trying to be more modern, and it still didn't work. They were axed, they were shut down, and unfortunately no more Saturns on the road. But in the group of Saturns, the one to buy would be any of the S-Series Saturns. There would be the SL1, SL2, SC1, SC2, any of these S-Series. Like I just said a minute ago, they were really good cars. If you find one that's clean, it's in decent shape, even if it has 150,000 miles on it, you can buy it, and rest assured you'll probably get another 100,000 miles out of it at least. They look decent, they're good on fuel, they really are a good car. I would recommend, if you're looking for a Saturn, to find you an S-Series Saturn. The SC series actually are kind of very nifty looking, very neat looking. Now the one I'm going to recommend not to buy is actually two different models. It'd be the Outlook or the Relay. Both of these vehicles towards the end used engines out of the GM parts bin. Towards the end they did use GM parts that were the horrible engines I've talked about. The Outlook used the horrible General Motors 3.6 V6. It's known for timing chain troubles, getting gummed up, and having to have a whole new engine to take care of the issue. If you've watched my previous videos, I always talk down on the 3.6, say don't do it. I say this over and over, don't do it, don't buy one of these. And the Outlook would fall into that category. It would have this engine, so I would say on that, run as fast as you can, just based on the engine, nothing else. That alone is enough for me to say, don't do it. And with any car, the engine is going to be where all the expenses are really to keep the thing running, that or the transmission. And if it's a known fact that the engine is a nightmare, it's a no-brainer, don't buy it. Now the Relay had the 3.9 V6, and they did make some improvements with this engine, but it's based off of the 3.4. Blown head gaskets and internal issues, intake gasket issues that would ruin the motor. I wouldn't buy the Relay, and in fact the Relay doesn't even look very desirable. It wasn't desirable then, and it's not desirable now. If you see one going down the road, what's the first thing you do? You go, ugh, I wouldn't want one of those. So, based on the engine and the way it looks, I wouldn't get a Relay as well. Another make from General Motors that went out about this time is Hummer. I'm not really going to get into buy this, not that on those. Really, they're not that great of vehicles no matter which one you choose. From my experience in the military with the true, authentic Humvees, there is no relation between those and the Hummers that you buy, the H2, the H3. There is nothing in common. They may have a little bit of styling that kind of resembles, but there's... H2 is basically a Suburban or Tahoe chassis or frame with a big box body on it. It's not the Humvee that you're thinking of in the military. I'm not going to really delve into the Hummers that much. And there's not much of a market for them anyway. There's not like there's... I might see one or two a year. I've seen Hoovies, the big yellow one, the Tonka truck looking one, and other than that, I really haven't seen any others on the road. There's not a lot of them around anymore. But I thought it'd be interesting to take you guys through a little trip of car companies that are no longer around, and it's just kind of thinking about what we're going through now. What kind of changes will we see through this? It'll be interesting to find out. It's getting pretty crazy out there, guys. I hope you can watch the videos and take your mind off of it a little bit. I know the video that we're doing now is kind of talks about it a little bit. It's just kind of the history of some of these cars that have gone under really is what it focuses on. And you guys have actually asked for this in the comments, and so I thought this is a good time when we're going through this kind of craziness, what the result of this was last time we went through some craziness. So if you're bored, you don't have anything else going on, you're on lockdown, check my Amazon affiliate. Maybe you want to fill somebody's birthday wish list or your personal birthday wish list or something else that's coming up, or if you're just interested in what kind of tools I use. Most of them are listed on my Amazon affiliate page in the link below. I also write for Auto Trader. I have articles and a few videos over there. If you click the link below, it'll take you to there. And if you haven't hit the subscribe button, do that. We've got many more cool videos to come and try to keep you guys entertained. We'll get through this together. Thanks for watching.